Morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Dairy Raid, or good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you. And we're back out on the road, or on the sidewalk anyways, for another morning constitutional to talk about Badger football. Before we get into that, I just need to say, America, spring football needs to be a thing. Okay, 75 degrees, clear skies with a cool breeze. I know football is a fall sport. The autumn wind is a pirate and all that jazz. But seriously, let's take baseball, put it into June, July, and August when nobody wants to go outside, and let's give April, May to football. Anyways, why are we here today? Well, I'm recording this to talk about a comment that I got on actually an older Substack posts that I put up, and thank you for those of you who go back and read the old ones, asking about Nick Evers. And I think that's a great topic for discussion. And the question was, and I'll put it up here on the screen next to me, is simply, with as easy or as simple as the playbook is that Phil Longo's put in, with only a handful of base plays, 25 or so base plays, how could knowledge and the playbook still be an issue for Nick Evers? Why is it so difficult that he couldn't take the next step and work into the lineup? Well, there are a lot of things that go in with that. I'm going to first say, and I've said this many times, not just about Nick Evers, but players in general. The raw skills are sometimes the most overrated skills a position player can have. What I mean is, it's like using the fact that a guy can go to Topgolf and smash long drives as a basis that he should be winning the Masters. There's a lot more to the game than just chucking the ball 70 yards downfield. Nick Evers threw a beautiful ball. There's no doubt about that. Everyone who's seen it who said the same thing. Nick Evers is a fantastic athlete. There's no question about that. But there's a lot more to making a quarterback than just how far you can chuck the football. And those are the areas that it appears Nick Evers has struggled with. Now, I'm going to state that everything that I'm going to speculate about in this video here is purely speculation, based on reports, based on what I've seen on sideline and hearing from Nick talk himself. Was it in the meeting room? Was it on the practice field with him? So I don't know exactly what happened, but I have a pretty good guess. So let's start with going back to the original question. What of the offense is so difficult that with 25 base plays he couldn't crack the starting lineup or rise any higher than sharing the third? Remember, let's remember, he exited last spring as the 5th string QB. He was beaten out by Marshall Howe for the 4th string job. He only got the 4th string job because Marshall Howe transferred after the spring. He's only in position to be the 3rd string now because of another transfer. He was in competition with maybe Matt Toyer, and he lost the 3rd string job, and that's why he's transferring. So why is it so difficult? From a playbook standpoint, I think it's really important to understand with the air raid, and like most teams, Phil Longo doesn't have a playbook. Okay, there's not a reference guide for Evers to sit down and study. It is all about note-taking and study and research that prepares you to understand the offense. With that, with having no playbook, it is really important to understand the subtleties of the offense. It is simple, but the offense is all based on rhythm and leverage. All the passing plays in Phil Longo's offense are tied to his footwork. So number one, that's probably the first place where he had problems. I will say this. He came from another air raid offense the previous year, and the footwork was different. Phil Longo's footwork is unique amongst college quarterbacks. Okay, the straight drop back as opposed to the traditional drop back. But what really comes with it is because the footwork is different, the timing is different. And I'm guessing at the beginning, what Nick Evers did was rely on what he knew from Oklahoma. What he knew and what he did there formed the basis of his game instead of starting over and learning the offense from Phil Longo. So he's sitting there translating in his head, oh, this means this from last year. This means that. Okay, I got it. When they are not exactly the same. Even if the plays drawn on paper by his offensive court, by Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma and Phil Longo are exactly the same, things like language, things like footwork and stuff like that are different. And because they are different, you can't just rely on saying this is how we did it last year. He needs to actually learn the difference and forget the past. So that's part of it, which is just a poor understanding of the basics of the offense by relying on what he thinks he knows. That's the first failure. Second failure, I'm not going to put on Nick Evers. Because a lot of times when you see such a dynamic athlete at the quarterback position, or any position really, what you end up getting is coaches who, well, they get lazy. They look at him and say, oh, look at him run. Look at him go. Yeah, he's thrown off platform and he's making bad reads, but boy, he's just making plays. Let's just go with that. So his coaching growing up probably was a lot more watching him play football than teaching him how to play quarterback. This has been the failure of many mobile quarterbacks that have come up through the ranks. Going back to Michael Vick and the failures of how to teach him correctly. He was 10 years ahead of the game anyways, and the coaches were 20 years behind back then. But I don't know if Nick Evers was really ever taught how to properly play quarterback. I think he was allowed to be an athlete. He was allowed to be a playmaker, and that served him well. It got him the scholarship offers. It got him the scholarship to Oklahoma. It impressed the Wisconsin coaches enough to get him to transfer to Wisconsin. But at the end, it hurt his game. So I'm not putting that on Nick. I'm putting that on everybody around him. I would probably do the same thing. It's real hard to nitpick special athletes and special football players. Okay? And then finally, what held Nick back was himself, his attitude. Okay? Because what I want you to do, again, I've heard him talk a couple times. You can kind of see maybe how disinterested he seemed at times. You know, he gave the right answers. You know, he's a good kid with that. He's a good kid down, you know, at the heart of it. But watch his demeanor on the sidelines during games. Compare him to Miles Burkett. Compare him to Braden Locke on the sideline. While those guys are standing there engaged, they either have the headset on or they have their helmet on. Evers, a lot of times, has his head down. Doesn't really look like he's paying attention. Certainly doesn't have the headset on or his helmet on. He just didn't seem like he wanted to be there. Okay, and I get it. You get into Wisconsin in the fall when it gets cold and it gets crappy out. Okay, and you're used to the sun and the warmth and being the guy. Losing the status of being the guy and sitting in the cold, it wear on a lot of us. But it certainly wear on Nick, because he really didn't want to be there most of the season, especially as they got deeper into the fall. And at the end of the day, it comes down to knowledge equals power, of course. But you've got to then use the knowledge to expand your game. And to the Wisconsin coaching staff, he never did that. Maybe he was behind the 8 ball to begin with, because he was essentially brought in before Phil Longo was the offensive coordinator. But you have two choices in that case. You either fight and you're the first guy in the door and the last guy out, or you cry, woe is me, and you sulk. And when you lose, you move on. That's maybe what happened. I wish Nick all the luck in the world going to UConn. Okay, Jim Mora Jr. is a solid head coach. Okay, and he's going to build a solid mid-major program at UConn. Maybe it's more of the environment that Nick Evers needs to be in. You know, he's no longer the man. Now he needs to prove that he can be the man when given the correct opportunity to do so. And let's see how it goes. You know, let's see how long he lasts at UConn. I mean, let's not forget that this will be Nick's, 5th commitment in 4 years? Something like that. Let's do the math. First he committed to Florida, decommitted, went to Oklahoma, transferred to Wisconsin, transferred to UConn. Okay, that's 4. Who knows? Grass might not be greener on the other side like we think it is. So, we'll see. I wish him all the luck in the world, though, because he's still young. He's still got a chance to show what he can. But I hope he's learned from his mistakes. And more importantly, I hope he's learned that he has to be the one to give himself playing time. And he's the one who has to do the extra work, because now he's got the reputation that he doesn't. So, let's see how he does. Hope he does well. All right. So, thanks a lot for coming along this walk with me. Again, Denmark in the spring, Denmark in the early summer. I highly recommend it. Great place to be. All right. See you next time.